My friends tricked me into breaking up with my boyfriend 8 years ago. I want him back now. I knew my ex-beau since we were both 11 years old. Our families were neighbors and became very close friends. We started dating in our junior year of high school. He took me to prom, to homecoming dance, and we both picked a college that was in the state that had majors we were both interested in. Everyone expected us to get married when we went off to college. The college we went to was 3 hours from our town, and it was closer to a major city in our state, and it was a bit of a culture shock for the two of us. Beau had issues at first making new friends, but I sort of jived with the gals in class. My new friends didn't think much of Beau. They kept telling me I could do better than Beau. They thought Beau was slow-witted. They thought he was too religious. They said Beau would just pull me back down to our small town, anchor me with children, and we'd both be stuck as hicks. It reached the boiling point on my 21st birthday. Two of my girlfriends came to me claiming they saw Beau cheating on me. They were stone-faced, they kept to their stories, and I foolishly believed them. I confronted Beau and started screaming at him. Beau didn't apologize, he didn't beg and plead. Instead, he got cold and mad. He said that he never trusted my friends, that they were playing me, and he thought I was better than this. I didn't believe him and I let him walk away. He promised that if I took their word without even looking at them critically, that we were over. And he kept his word. From that day, he wouldn't even look at me. He wouldn't talk to me, he wouldn't acknowledge I existed. For the rest of college, he never dated anyone. He just worked, went to class, and graduated early. My friends, they set me up on a ton of dates. I had a bit of a wild college ride, racking up a body count in the 80s before leaving. Once I graduated, I tried to get established in life, but my college friends kept just wanting to hang out, chill, or party. It honestly got tiring, and I couldn't believe I had the energy to do this for nearly 4 years while getting an education. It was when I was 23 that one of the girls called me a stick in the mud and said something along the lines of, "I can't believe we went through the effort of breaking you up with Beau if you were just going to become a wallflower." I couldn't believe it. She went into detail about how easy it was, and I felt disgusted. I didn't give Beau another thought after the breakup. I thought he was a cheater, and I told my family, who told his family, and it strained his relationship with his mom for many years. But after that point, I couldn't stop thinking about him. I told my family the truth about what happened with Beau. This apparently helped repair the relationship Beau had with his mother. Apparently, Beau's mom liked me quite a bit, and she went out of her way to sabotage Beau's relationships with any girl he brought over to meet the parents. My mom said Beau's mom did it very discreetly, but after finding out the truth, Beau's mom came clean and Beau nearly cut her out of his life. She apparently begged and pleaded, and was able to work from there. I have many unfinished drafts of emails to Beau, some saying I wish to catch up, others begging for forgiveness and pleading for him to come back to me. But any news I got on Beau after the blow-up with his mom has been sparse. Beau doesn't do social media, and I had no idea where he lived. I found out this year that Beau has been married for 3 years, and has a 2-year-old son. He has moved back to our hometown, and I saw him at the grocery store when I went to visit my parents 2 weeks ago. He didn't see me, or at least I think he didn't. But, there he was with his wife and child, and I instantly felt a swirl of emotions. Jealousy, rage, regret, depression. Even now, seeing him with his full family, I still want to beg him for a chance, which makes me feel awful, but at the same time I feel like I should at least say my piece. I talked to my mom about it, and all she said was the chickens come home to roost. Don't make trouble for Beau. I just know that if I can't talk to Beau one last time, I will regret it for the rest of my life. What do I do?
My best friend is telling me that my boyfriend cheated with her, but he says that she's lying. Plus update. I've been best friends with Becca since our childhood, and lived with her until I moved in with my boyfriend Nate a few years ago. Becca has always had a drinking problem, and she's done stuff while intoxicated that has sometimes caused problems in our friendship. She actually slept with my 16-year-old brother while intoxicated, but I forgave her after she apologized relentlessly. Becca does try to stay sober, but every few years something will happen to make her start drinking again, which is what happened earlier this summer. So last Saturday Becca called me because she was intoxicated somewhere and needed a ride home. I couldn't go pick her up because I had the flu and I was on cold medicine, so Nate went to get her instead. A couple of days after that I started noticing that Nate was being weird with his phone. My first thought was that he was trying to plan a surprise, and because of the timing I thought that maybe Becca was helping him. Yesterday I saw Becca. I told her that Nate was being sneaky all of a sudden and asked her if he said anything about maybe proposing soon. She asked me if I looked through his phone and I said no. Becca started crying and told me that she and Nate hooked up in his car the night that he came to pick her up. Her excuse was that she was really intoxicated and didn't fully know what she was doing. She said she'd been texting him since, telling him that he needed to tell me what happened or else she was going to. I asked Becca to show me the texts, but they were all in the app Signal, which deletes messages after a day, so all I could see was that she and Nate had a chat thread but nothing that they said. I told her to text Nate in front of me so I could see what he said, and she did, but we got no read receipt and no response at all, so it didn't prove anything. I asked Becca if she was sure she wasn't so intoxicated that she imagined it, or thought a dream was real, and she absolutely lost it on me. She started screaming that she knows that she's horrible when she drinks, but that she's not effing delusional and she doesn't make stuff up. She said that I could believe her or not and it's my choice, but she was telling me the truth. I said I needed to go home and talk to Nate. So when I got home I confronted Nate with what Becca had said. He acted shocked and denied that anything like that had happened at all. He said that he had just given Becca a ride home and the only thing that happened was that they talked about how he and I had been together for a long time and how we should get married already. He admitted they were talking on Signal the next couple of days, but he said that it was about exactly what I thought, that he was asking her about engagement rings and what kind of proposal I would want. Nate replied to Becca's message from before, asking her if she made up a story about them hooking up to not ruin the surprise about his proposal, and she texted him back that there was no proposal and to stop playing dumb. So then Nate called her pretending like I wasn't in the room and told her that she needed to stop whatever she was trying to do because we were on the verge of breaking up and he'd rather just have the surprise be ruined, but Becca just kept telling Nate to stop lying until he got angry and hung up on her. I really didn't know what to think and I still don't. Right now Nate is really upset and not really talking to me much. He says that it's bad enough that Becca acted insane and ruined his plan to propose, but it's even worse that I believed her lies even a little and would think that he would ever cheat on me. Becca texted me saying she was sorry, but otherwise I haven't talked to her either. I need to find the truth out somehow. Update: I lied to Nate that I had found out a way to recover deleted messages from Signal. He immediately took out his phone and opened the app and asked me to show him how to do it, so I already thought that must mean he was telling me the truth because he didn't panic or hesitate at all. When I tried to download Signal on my old phone, it turned out that it's too old to support the current version of the app, so it wouldn't work. Nate then asked me if we were going to have to go out and buy a new phone for me to believe that he was telling me the truth, and he said that he was willing to do it if that's what it would take. I told Nate it wasn't that I didn't believe him, I just wanted to have some proof because I just couldn't understand why Becca would lie about it. Nate said that she would lie about it because she's a effing crazy bitch and there's literally no way for a non-crazy person to understand why she would do anything, and once the messages prove that he didn't cheat, he never wants me talking to her again. Then he said to get up because if we were going to go to the Verizon store we had to get there before it closed. By then I completely believed Nate anyway, so I told him we didn't have to go anywhere or get a new phone and that I believed him and I knew he didn't cheat on me and that he would never do that. Nate said that he would hope I know that and that he didn't understand why I didn't take his word for it in the first place. I started trying to explain why I didn't want to just immediately dismiss what Becca had said happened, but Nate said that he really couldn't listen to that right now. I said that was fair and agreed that I would cut Becca off, but that first I wanted to try to get her to admit that nothing happened. Nate said fine, but to call her with my phone on speaker because he thought he also deserved to hear her admit that she was lying. So I called Becca and I said the same thing to her that I said to Nate, that I figured out how to recover deleted messages on Signal. She asked me why I would need to do that, so that was when I knew for sure that she was definitely making it up and not just confused somehow. I said it was because I wanted to have proof of what she and Nate talked about. Becca asked me if I saw their messages, so I lied and said yes. After that Becca just went silent until finally I asked her if she was going to say anything. Then she asked me if that meant that we were engaged now. So then I really just lost it on her. I screamed at her asking her if she was effing serious and what the F was wrong with her. How could that possibly be all that she had to say? Becca started screaming back telling me to effing calm down and about how obviously I never believed her anyway because it's not like we broke up over it. I was crying by that point and because of that I couldn't really say anything else, so then Nate told Becca to go F herself and to never ever contact either one of us ever again and hung up on her. A minute later Becca sent me a completely unhinged text that read, "Courtney, you are supposed to be my friend for life. You are supposed to be there for me. You are supposed to be my person. But then you meet Nate and now you only care about Nate. Everything is about Nate. Tell me why Nate comes to pick me up when I call you? I called you, not your precious effing Nate. I only want you to see how effed up this is, but do you? No. Of course you don't. Of course you choose Nate over me like you always do and like you always will. You pretend to care about me but I can see you don't care. It is pathetic, Courtney. You are a pathetic woman who would choose a man over a friend. Also, remember when I effed your little brother, I was never sorry. I bet you don't even care about him anymore, since you have your sweet perfect little baby Nate. Goodbye, Courtney. Is that what you want? Goodbye forever. I hope you effing got what you effing want." This one cut deep, as about a year after she had intimacy with my brother, he passed away in a car accident. There were the 3 dots after that showing she was still typing more. But I blocked her before she sent it.
Seasoned substance users, what is your worst experience on substances? This past weekend I took 13 grams of mushrooms. 5 is considered a heroic dose, 13 is irrational. I am diagnosed with BPD, bipolar disorder, paranoia, avoidant personality disorder, autism and ADHD, and have used mushrooms a lot in the past to help me mentally. However, I never took anything close to this amount before. I cannot fully put into words the experiences I was having. I was probably 2 hours into this trip, laying in bed having the most profound revelations about multiple universes. Life was dissolving. The fabric of this reality was ripping apart as I was flying through it. There was no difference between me and the bed I was laying on. I was the air I was breathing. I first pooped my pants right around the time I gave in to the idea that I had been holding on for too long. This wasn't a light shart, this was a full-on 5-alarm explosive pooping of pants. It was falling out of my shorts onto the floor no matter how hard I squeezed my glutes. I managed to make it to the toilet before full evacuation occurred, but my clothes didn't make it off, so I just pooped right through all of that. It was the best feeling of my life. I also remember thinking this is the last lucid moment you're having for a good long while. In my stupor, I took the dogs outside and this is when I died. I slowly, finally, and completely let go, and the 1 hour I was out there was eternity. It started off with me thinking I had finally fallen into permanent psychosis. I was upset because my family and anyone in my sphere of influence would never be able to shake me. It quickly devolved into me fully believing I was dead. Everything was looping, good to bad, bad to all right. Initially, I was sad and scared. That melted into acceptance of where I am, letting go of where I've been, and forgiving myself for my failures, which also led me to forgive everyone who I felt had wronged me. It was the single most profound hour of my life. Unfortunately, for my wife, bless her beautiful soul, this was anything but profound. She had already been awakened by my yelling outside and was cleaning the bathroom and bedroom. She came out probably 10 times trying to get me back in. At first, she thought I was having a mental breakdown or a stroke, or had taken too much medication again. I thought she was part of the eternal loop. Eventually she got it out of me what I'd taken, and, though she was apoplectic, she managed to get me back inside. I distinctly remember her saying several times that she was going to call the police. I'm glad she didn't. I'm not sure I'd be actually alive if she had. Once she got me inside, things only got more intense for me. Believing fully that I was dead, I let it all go. I went from intense spells of sweating to shivering cold. I spent the next 4 hours writhing around the bed, bedroom, bathroom, and closet, unable to control my bowels. I pooped for 2.5 hours. There was poop everywhere. On her clothes in the closet, on the walls, under the bed. I literally pooped on my wife. I rolled in it. When I came to, I realized I was covered in my own poop. Head to toe. My hair was matted down. It felt like clay dried to my skin. On top of all that, I had also vomited everywhere. My wife later told me you were throwing up blue and coffee grounds. After I came down off the peak, I laid in bed for probably another 45 minutes. I couldn't talk. I couldn't move. It was a mixture of processing, questioning, and then realizing how badly I had effed up. Never have I ever been that out of it. Never have I felt this shame. I thought I was going to lose everything. My wife finally talked me out of bed and walked me to the shower. It's a good thing she had a pathway of towels and trash bags from the bed to the shower because I was dripping poop. She put me in the shower, fully clothed. After letting my clothes soak for a moment, she held out a bag and I threw them away. She gave me a washcloth and I cleaned myself off. This happened 5 more times. 4 washcloths, and 2 hand towels. 2 bath towels were also tossed. I couldn't speak. I was beyond ashamed of what I had done to her. I was also still having to process being alive after being dead for eternity. If I could have left then, I would have. Rightfully so, I was kicked out by my wife. I spent the day driving aimlessly, stopping every 30 minutes to bawl my eyes out and rest. She then decided to take me back. I can't mess this up again. We have had the master bedroom professionally cleaned twice and we still have to replace the carpet. The drywall guy is coming out later this week, so in the meantime we have a poop wall. I don't know how this is possible, but in a room with 4-meter ceilings, I hit the ceiling. She did 13 loads of laundry. I'm buying her a new mattress as well as a whole new set of pillows and blankets. The drapes have already been replaced. My wife and I have talked at length about this and are in agreement that I cannot take mushrooms anymore. Long road ahead, but I'm finally ready to face it head on.
I yelled at my pregnant sister-in-law, and told my husband to choose between me and her plus update. I have been married to my husband for 8 years. 2 months ago I had my 3rd miscarriage at 31 weeks. About 4 months ago, my sister-in-law came crying at our doorstep telling us she's pregnant and her boyfriend didn't want anything to do with the pregnancy, and she had nowhere to go. My husband and I openly took her in. For the first few weeks, it was really hard for her. I sat with her for hours, holding her when she cried. It was really bonding for us. But it started going downhill. I take pride in my neat, clean home. My sister-in-law on the other hand did not. She would leave her clothes all around the house, leave her dirty dishes wherever, even went as far as leaving her intimacy toys on our living room table. I tried to talk to her directly before I talked to my husband. She immediately started crying and told me she would try to be cleaner. I hugged her, told her it was okay, but this is a clear boundary for me. She told me it wouldn't happen again. But it only got worse. She told me I was expected to do her laundry, dishes, and clean her room daily because she's the pregnant one. Well, I do understand how hard it is being pregnant. I just couldn't allow feeling like a maid in my own home. Not to mention my recent loss of my child. So, I told my husband, but what he told me shocked me. His exact words were, "Honey, she's going through a lot right now, we really should be helping her out. Plus, it might make you feel better to take care of someone who's pregnant." I was angry to say the least. While I don't want to invalidate her pain, my husband and I were also going through our own problems. Either way, we moved on. I did my best to maintain work and the household chores. My husband works from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. so he isn't around to help much. I work full-time from home so it's been super stressful. When I even try to ask for help from my sister-in-law, she always makes excuses. The one thing that pushed me over the edge was when I went out to buy my own food that I have actually enjoyed eating after my miscarriage. I wrote my name on it and directly asked my sister-in-law to not eat it. Well, I went to go to my fridge to get it and I saw she freaking ate it. I told my husband and of course he rubbed it into my face that she's pregnant, I need to be less selfish, and life is about sacrifices. I was so upset I told him I felt like he and her were horrible roommates. He didn't take that well. A little while later, my sister-in-law planned a random baby shower party at my house without even telling me. I personally didn't know if I could even be home when this was happening. I felt so hurt that she wouldn't talk to me knowing everything that has happened and that she would just invite random strangers into another person's home before asking. My husband urged me to go, telling me it would permanently affect mine and her relationship. So, I told him I'd go. About halfway through the party, my husband and sister-in-law announced that they wanted to show the nursery to everyone. I was confused. Nursery? She was staying that long? What room did she turn into a nursery? They told everyone to head upstairs. That's when it hit me. They were talking about my nursery, for my baby I had just lost. A wave of emotions hit me when I saw everyone in my baby's nursery telling her what a good job they did setting it up. My setup. For my baby, that my body failed to give me. I just lost it. I started sobbing, then that sadness turned into pure rage. I started yelling at my sister-in-law, telling her she's the foulest human for putting me through everything she has for the last few months. Making me feel like I was a maid, or an object for her convenience. Through choked-up tears I turned to my husband whose jaw was on the floor. I turned my head to see his entire family just staring at me. I lost it again. Yelling, I looked at my sister-in-law telling her, how dare she use my nursery, for my baby, how dare she think she has the right. What she told me made me fall to my knees sobbing. It's not my fault you couldn't produce a child, why let this go to waste, you're so selfish. My husband tried to pick me up off the floor, but I yelled again, standing to my knees, which were now shaking. I told him to pick between me and her. He had a dumbfounded look on his face. I yelled again, pick, me or her. He couldn't even muster up anything to say. I just looked at him, pure vitriol. I pushed past the crowd of family and ran straight out. Update: after all of that, I sat on my bed, wiping my tears and telling myself I will not take this disrespect. I walked downstairs, shutting my nursery door on the way. I was greeted with everyone comforting my sister-in-law. I kindly asked everyone besides my sister-in-law and husband to respectfully get the F out of my house. After all the dirty looks and shaming, it was just my husband, sister-in-law and myself. They sat themselves on the couch, not saying anything. I sat with them. The silence felt like forever, none of us had anything to say. I knew I'd have to start the conversation. I looked at my husband and said, "Did you decide?" He looked at me just staring. I asked again in a firm tone this time. He ended up mumbling some sort of insult and I couldn't really make out what he said. Something with beach. I stood up and told them both to get out, then they wanted to talk. Telling me this is all a misunderstanding, they are sorry, blah blah blah. I grabbed a backpack from my shoe closet and told them to pack their stuff. My sister-in-law told me I couldn't just make her leave, and I was a horrible person. I laughed in her face and told her this is my house, and I can do whatever I wanted. My husband stood next to me and told her it was only for a little while. I turned to him and said, "Oh, you too, get out." He got all mad and told me we were a married couple and that this isn't how marriage works. I told him, no it is not, marriage is where two people support each other, and not treat their wife like crap. They both ended up leaving after many insults towards me. Oh, but wait, it's not over. This morning as I was getting ready for a Zoom meeting with a few other coworkers, when my husband showed up. I let him in telling him to get whatever he needed and to go because I had to work. He started apologizing and telling me he wants to make it right. I told him I just needed time away from him. Then he threw this in my face, "Well, it's not my fault you lost our children, maybe this would have never happened." My sister was right, you are selfish. I have never ever made my husband feel like he cannot grieve with me over this, never made him feel less than because of his pain. I turned around and slapped him in the face. I never condone violence, and I'm very upset I would ever do that to another human, but I just couldn't deal with this. He took a step back and then threw all of my makeup on the floor, but then he started breaking all of my decor in my bathroom. I yelled at him to stop and that I was sorry, but he just kept going. Even going as far as punching a hole in my bathroom wall. It was like I was seeing all of his bottled up emotions from our children's death come out. But he went too far when he tried to grab me and started yelling in my face. I kicked him off and told him to get the F out. He walked out of the bathroom, and I watched him break a few more items as he left. The second he left I had a panic attack, looking at the mess he made, to even just seeing how much he hid his pain. I called my mother and told her everything that has been happening. She told me she was on her way. The second she got here, I just broke down and she held me. Then she stood up and started taking pictures of everything he broke. I asked her what she was doing, and she turned to me and said, "We're suing this piece of crap." I honestly didn't even argue. I was so hurt by everything my husband did to me. My mom packed up my computer and I grabbed a few outfits. My mom and I drove to a hotel, and she insisted on staying with me. While I finished up work, my mom called a locksmith and my attorney. I will be divorcing him as well. My entitled sister-in-law has torn my family apart. My sister-in-law Kara is married to my elder brother Connor. Kara came from an affluent family who liked to flaunt their wealth and put down anyone who is not as rich as them. She attended private schools before going to an Ivy League. She's never had a real job. She used to be an influencer before influencers were a thing, but she wasn't successful at it. She really lived on her parents' dime. When she was 30, they said they would stop supporting her financially. She married her first husband shortly after. She went no contact with her parents after the wedding, which they paid for. Her first marriage only lasted a year or two before divorce due to her cheating. Shortly after, she started dating Connor and things got serious very fast. The first time I met Kara, it was interesting. She met everyone at a family wedding as Connor's +1. She was someone who was very confident, but it didn't always need her competence. Like she would very confidently turn to someone and say the wrong name or wrong info. I remember she went up to my cousin and said very loudly, "Josh, I heard you're a lawyer." My cousin gently corrected her on her name and occupation. When he did, Kara scoffed, rolled her eyes, and continued the conversation. She was very comfortable with us, and said some things that I was like wouldn't say that upon meeting someone for the first time, but I dismissed it. The first time she met my wife was a whole other experience. My wife wasn't at the before-mentioned wedding as she was working. My wife is of Samoan descent. Kara is white. When she met her, Kara immediately led her on to a string of questions. Where are you from? Oh, well, what are you? No, I don't mean your occupation. What's your ethnic background? When she finally got to know that my wife was of Samoan descent, she made a comment that she was real-life Moana and then asked if her brother plays football and if her extended family makes canoes. My wife gently pointed out that the questions were based on stereotypes and a bit prejudiced. Kara jumps in, "I'm not prejudiced, I have all sorts of friends who are people of color." Then there was my wife and I's wedding. Basically, I danced with nearly every family member, including Connor. Next morning, I got a text from Kara saying that she didn't like Connor dancing with other people and him dancing with me made him uncomfortable. She's also been frankly rude to my other older brother Alan's children. We were having dinner one summer and one of Alan's children fell and skinned his knee pretty bad. He was 3 when this happened and started wailing loudly. You know, typically child behavior. Karen rolled her eyes, looked at me, and said "Uck. Isn't he so dramatic?" "No, he's a child." As if Karen didn't have a breakdown after falling down while roller skating with the family a few months back. My wife and I also have twins. Frankly, I tried to keep them away from Kara. Our twins were born 5 months before Connor and Kara's first. One of our twins happens to have a name with the same first letter of their first and are somewhat similar. We had no idea what they were choosing. When we announced the names, Kara threw a effing fit. Like my family is visiting in the hospital room, everyone's excited, and we see Kara suddenly leave the room. Connor followed her. He came back and said she was crying and we were like, "Oh, happy tears?" Like thinking it would be her in a couple months? Nope. We stole her baby name. We didn't even know what their baby name was and didn't share ours with anyone. Our name is a family name, there is just one thing like. It's not even the same name, just the same letter. She ended up using the name anyway. Connor and Kara have 2 kids together now. I really don't like to mom shame because parenthood is hard. However, she's not maternal to the kids. The couple instances I've engaged with her while she has kids, she doesn't engage them in any way. No talking, making faces, playing, etc. She seems completely uninterested in her children. I do have a cousin who lives by them and sends her kids to the same preschool they send theirs. It's been communicated that their oldest, who's now 4, has some sort of behavioral issues. It's to the point people don't invite them to play dates, birthday parties, etc. and Kara refuses to get him any kind of help because everyone is a hater, and he's perfect.
I'm losing my fiancée because I went against her wishes plus 2 updates. I proposed to my fiancée 2 months ago and she said yes. I love her with all my heart. Only problem that we were facing was that I haven't met her family because she has not had any contact with them for 20 years. For my family, that's a red flag. My mum suggested to me that since we are engaged now they're my family too, so we contacted them. Her mum was so sweet and she started crying the moment I introduced myself. Her father is also very kind. They talked to me about her childhood, how wonderful she always was, and it made a lot of sense what she turned out to be. I thank them for raising such a beautiful human. I kept in touch with them and I soon met all her siblings. She has 3, then I introduced them to my family and I was happy they got along. Mum suggested then that the next step is to invite my future in-laws to my parents' house and take my fiancée there so she could finally work on the dispute that she had with them. I agreed and brought my fiancée over without the knowledge of her family being present. When she got there she screamed, "What are they doing here?" and ran out. I have never heard her raise her voice like this before. I ran after her but she just drove off. I went back and apologized. Her mum was crying her eyes out and so were her sisters. Her dad and brother looked shook up. When I went home she was crying and packing. She told me that she needed to move out and that she was staying with her friends. I also started crying and asked her to tell me what happened. Then she told me all of it. When she was 18, her brother roped her best friend's little sister. He apparently had feelings for this girl for years but she never was interested, so one New Year party he waited until she was very intoxicated and roped her. He later boasted about how he finally had her and now can move on. He got away with it even when everybody knew he did, but there was no evidence. My fiancée tried everything to help convict him because she was the one who overheard him boasting to his friends and discussing what he did to that girl. My fiancé's family did everything to protect him. A year later the girl went through with suicide. That broke my fiancée, who still suffers from severe depression. She said the indifference in her family's reaction when they found out about the girl's fate still makes her blood freeze in her veins. She knew she could never forgive them. The way she was talking, like this happened yesterday. I felt sick and I wished I didn't have to ask. I have seen her brother and how proud her parents are of their only boy who's successful and a father of two. I apologized and begged her to stay. Told her that had she told me all this before, I would never have brought them back to her life. She said that I should have trusted her judgment since I always boasted about how kind and just she was. She called me later and told me that she couldn't do this anymore. She left the ring while I was at work, and took the last of her stuff. Mum says that my fiancée is being overdramatic now and all this has happened so long ago and we should all move on since her family still loved and wanted her back. Today, I decided to call my fiancée before breakfast. I told her that I love her more than she knows and that I know she loves me. That I never in a million years thought people who loved each other this much would break up. I apologized and promised to make it up to her for the rest of my life if she gave me a second chance. I told her we can move away from our families and I promised her that it would be the two of us from now on. Nobody will have a say in how we live our lives but us. She was crying the whole time and I must admit that I'm not a crier myself, but I haven't stopped crying since yesterday. I hope she gives me a new chance to make it up to her. Update 1, we are no longer together. She said that she couldn't come back from this and that she wanted to be alone now. I told her that I love her like I never loved anyone before. She said that she loved me too but that she needed to do this on her own now. Edit, my now ex-fiancé's best friend called me now and we talked. My fiancée is pregnant and she's terminating it. She doesn't want me with her when she goes through with it. I am shattered now and I don't know if I can ever collect the pieces. Edit 2, I somehow managed to convince my fiancée to agree to couples therapy, but without the promise of forgiving me or taking me back. I feel like I got a new shot at life. My fiancée called me today after her appointment at her shrink. She asked me if I wanted to have lunch with her. I of course said yes. She looked so sad and it broke my heart. This was the first time I saw her after she moved out. I just wanted to hug her and break down crying, ask her forgiveness, but I didn't want to make it about me, so I just kissed her cheek. She didn't talk for at least 30 minutes, just looked out of the window. I waited. She then told me that it didn't matter, that I didn't hurt her intentionally, I just did. I agreed. She started talking about her appointment with her gyno. She's 6 weeks along. We have been trying for a year, we never made a big fuss, we just thought that if it happened, but I know that she wanted a baby and that's why her friend told me, because she was terrified that my fiancé is going to regret it. I told my fiancé that it was absolutely 100% her choice whether she wanted to keep it or not, but that she should never do either from a place of hurt, or anger. She should do it because it feels right for her. She then told me that she is going to think a little bit more. She also told me that she was ready to talk to me about her life with her family but never any details, and only in therapy sessions. She also said that she was ready to listen to me and what made me do this stupid thing to her, but also only in therapy. She also told me that she doesn't want to move back with me and that she wanted to postpone the wedding. She refused to take the ring back and said she would ask for it if she thought we had a chance. She said that if we separate, she wants to know she's done everything. I told her I love her more than anything and she said she believed me and that she did too. We are starting therapy on Tuesday and will hopefully continue every week. Update 2, so we had our first session with a therapist. It was emotionally draining. The therapist sent me to be a little biased and favored her side of the point, but I did. Overall we had a good discussion and I learned some heartbreaking things. It turns out, the girl her brother roped originally wasn't his first victim. He had done it before, to one of her friends, and she had always hated him since that day. Sadly, she couldn't do anything to successfully press charges against him the first time, so when it happened the second time she realized she needed to escape. I hated seeing her so hurt, but I realized how important it was for us if we have a shot. I always view her as this beautiful, stubborn and strong creature, and maybe I have handled her accordingly. She is tough so I can be tough. That's how I have always viewed it. Besides therapy, she has asked for space, and I would have obliged had she not called me every night to talk for hours about very random things or just to keep each other's company. Last night I asked her to move back and she didn't hang up. She didn't answer me first and we continued talking about other things. Before saying good night she told me that she wanted to come home. We will continue therapy but she is moving back tomorrow. I have also decided to cut contact with my own family after realizing that them bashing my fiancé over her reaction was not normal. My mother also harassed my fiancé when she first broke up with me and I cut contact with her then. Since we both have no relationship with our families, we are contemplating an elopement around Christmas. A wedding seems too excessive and a waste of money. Instead, we could do something small and romantic for our friends and maybe donate the rest of the budget. This idea excited her very much and she already started planning and dreaming while I listened. I just effing love this woman. My sister's boyfriend said he wanted me so my sister attacked me. My older sister's boyfriend confessed his feelings to me. I, 17, have an older sister, 21, who I'll call B. B has a boyfriend, 21, who I'll call J. J has confessed that he has feelings for me and he said that he has had them for a long time. Just to clarify, J and B have been together for almost a year and I've known J because my sister had a huge crush on him when they were in high school. So I was really happy for her when she told me they were dating, and since my sister still lives at home with our parents, Jay has been over a lot of times for dinner or just to hang out with my sister. During our first meeting when we brought him home to meet the family, I didn't try to be overly friendly with him, but I was nice to him. My sister told me later that he thought that I was a bit too cold to him and asked me to be nice to him, so every other time I saw him, I was nice. I greeted him, talked with him about several topics which we had in common like anime, which we were both very huge fans of, and I thought he was really cool. But that was it. I had no interest in him romantically and just saw him as my sister's boyfriend. But just yesterday during a Halloween party our family was having with our friends and family, Jay obviously came as my sister's date. I was having a lot of fun and I remember Jay coming up to me and asked if I could help him get drinks from the fridge that our family kept in the garage, and I agreed. On the way there, we were talking about our costumes and how they matched as they were from the same anime. Before we returned to the house, he grabbed my hand and told me he had something to say. He then confessed to me that he had a crush on me and that he was first hoping that his feelings for me would go with time, but he felt like every day he came to our house his feelings would grow. He also said that he can't stop thinking about me. I felt uncomfortable as he spoke and asked what about my sister and their relationship, and he said that he loves my sister but loved me more than her, and said that he was sorry for having feelings for me when I am still a minor and he is an adult, and that he just felt like he had to let me know. I was quiet and so was he as he looked at me awaiting my answer. I told him that I don't have feelings for him and I think that him confessing to me will ruin the friendly relationship between us, and I told him that I'd tell my sister because I didn't want her to misunderstand. But he begged me not to tell my sister because he still wanted to date her, and I told him that he can't date someone if he doesn't have feelings for them, and ran back to my house to try and find my sister. I found her and she immediately asked where Jay was. I pulled her aside while telling her that there was something she had to know, and we went to the bathroom, which was fairly quiet, and I told her about what Jay had told me. She looked at me silently for a few seconds before going outside the bathroom. I followed her and saw her take Jay away by the hand as they went to a room upstairs. I couldn't focus on the party anymore and kept looking up to see if Jay would leave the house, but he didn't leave. Even after the party was beginning to end, they were still up there. I thought maybe it had gone bad and that Jay had probably hurt my sister, so I told my mom what happened and we both went to check on her. We found them cuddling on her bed and immediately she saw me. She told me to get out of her room. I was confused and asked what I had done. She told me that she's always known that I was jealous of her relationship with Jay and that she couldn't believe I'd go as far as lying to about Jay confessing to me, and said that Jay was an adult and I was a child and whatever obsession I had with Jay should end. Then she told my mom a whole other story that Jay had apparently told her. Apparently Jay told my sister that we were talking about anime in the garage while getting more drinks, and I began to confess about how I liked him from the moment I saw him and that he tried to reject me nicely, but I ran off to B and told her a completely different story just to make Jay look bad. I tried to defend myself, but for some reason my mother sided with B and dragged me out of B's room. My mother then told my dad what B had told her, and my father was confused at first, but at least he listened to my side of the story, but my mom didn't believe me. She even called my aunts who were there and began to tell them, and they were all telling me how wrong I was for trying to break my sister's relationship apart. B also came down with Jay and escorted Jay out before coming back to tell me that I have always tried to get everything from her and she knew one day I'd try to steal her boyfriends, and my mom and aunt shamed me for it. Only my dad believed me. I have been upset about it and both my mom and sister are ignoring me. I also cried a lot to my dad telling him the story over and over, hoping that he doesn't get lied to by my sister. I sent a text to Jay telling him that he was a horrible person and told him how I couldn't believe he lied to my family, and he sent a screenshot to my sister, and just a few minutes ago she's yelled at me for still trying to ruin her relationship and for being obsessed and jealous of her, and I was crying. I just want to know what I should do to prove my innocence. It feels so horrible to be accused of such a thing. I'm not talking to anyone in my house and I've been locked in my room. Update: my sister's boyfriend said he wanted me, so my sister attacked me. Someone told me to send my dad the link to my post and I did. I think he showed it to my mom or sent her same link because she came to my room and said she wanted to talk to me. I refused because I had tried talking to her many times to prove myself, but she ignored me or refused to hear me out. She then told my dad to try and make us talk, but I refused again and told my dad that I wanted to go to my grandparents' house and stay there because I was uncomfortable at home. I also specifically said in front of my mom that I wanted to go to a place where no one thought I was trying to steal another person's boyfriend, and my mom tried to defend herself saying that it was a misunderstanding and that she was ready to listen to me, but I didn't want to talk to her. I think she might have read the comments from my first post calling her a bad mother and was trying to convince herself that she was a good parent in that situation when she wasn't. My dad took me to my grandparents' house on Tuesday and they immediately believed my side of the story when I told them what happened, and while my dad was still in their house, my grandfather told him to ban Jay from coming to our house. My grandmother wanted to confront my mom, but I knew my mom would feel bad about it and probably cry, and even if many people here told me to let my mom get called out by my grandparents, I didn't want that. It would cause more drama with her side of the family and it would become something big, and maybe they would all end up taking my mom's side, which was Jay's side, and I didn't want that. Also, my dad discouraged it for the same reason. So I stayed with my grandparents for almost a week and it was nice. My dad would call me regularly to check on me. My mom tried to call me and she sent me a lot of texts asking me to come home, but I didn't want to. I had blocked my sister on everything, so I don't know if she tried reaching out, but I highly doubt she did. My dad called and told me that my mom has been crying a lot and begging him to get me to come back, and my grandmother also told me to go back for her sake, so I had to. My grandparents took me back home after school and my mom started to act all nice and sweet to me and was trying to do everything for me and asking for a girls' day out with just me and her, but I refused. Before I wouldn't question this because she's usually nice to me, but after what happened and her siding with my sister plus accusing me for trying to ruin my sister's relationship, I wasn't ready to be friendly with her. I also couldn't see her the same after embarrassing and shaming me with her sisters. I think it was around 6 or 7 p.m. and I was in my room and became knocking on my door and asked if they can come in. I went to check who else was there and I saw it was Jay. I refused and tried to close my door but they blocked it. My sister kept saying that they were trying to fix things but I didn't want to listen and kept pushing my door to close it, but they were also pushing to open it and actually ended up opening it. I told them to leave my room and I was shouting for my dad to come up to my room, but my sister closed the door with her and Jay inside and leaned against it while telling me to calm down and hear them out. I refused and kept telling them to leave and tried to push my sister out to leave, but Jay tried to pull me back and I shouted at him not to touch me. My sister started crying and told me to stop acting this way and to just hear them out. My dad also came and was knocking for the door to be opened and I said I would only listen to her if she lets my dad stay with me in the room, but she said that they both wanted to talk to only me and open the door to tell my dad and my mom, who was also there, about it, and of course my mom made my dad leave me with these people just because B was crying and she never cries unless it's serious and that kind of bull. So I called my dad and remained on the line with him and told him to listen just in case they tried to do something, and my sister was fine with it. I also told them to stay next to the door away from me, and then my sister started saying that Jay was really worried when I wasn't at home and she also became worried because this wasn't me, and then Jay said that he felt guilty for being the cause of our family having issues and then said that he decided to forgive me for trying to break him and my sister up and that he hoped everything could go back to the way they were before the party. My sister then started apologizing for saying mean stuff to me and said that no matter what she will always love me and that she wanted us to be close again. She also said that it was fine for me to like Jay but I shouldn't try to break them up because they were very happy together and that I would understand if I found someone that I loved like she loved Jay. Isn't that ridiculous? I even find it a bit funny. I asked my dad if he heard what they said and he scoffed, but my sister started saying that she understood that I was upset now, which is why they got me something, but it was in her room. Jay then said that it was very expensive but he got it for me because he knew I really wanted it and said how excited he had been to give it to me. My sister then asked if she could give me a hug for making up and then she said that we should go together with my mom for a girls' day out to make up, and I told her and her boyfriend to get out of my room. Jay then said that they were just trying to make up with me and that they both missed hanging out with me, and I told him to shut up and never talk to me again. I then told my sister that as long as she thought I liked Jay and as long as she believed Jay's side of the story over mine, I didn't want her to talk to me and I didn't want her in my room too, and that they should leave. B got mad and shouted at me saying that I was being mean and that despite the fact that I was trying to break them apart, she still wanted to be the bigger person and make up with me. My mom then came to the room, I think she was listening with my dad or standing outside my door, and said that we should all get along and the fight should end because we were all acting childish because of it. Jay was acting all innocent the whole time, nodding and agreeing with everything. I still don't understand why they're trying to make everything seem like it was before after publicly humiliating me in front of the family for telling them the truth about Jay. I told my dad to come and help me out of this situation and he came and told them not to force me to talk to them when I didn't want to, and my sister insisted that we should make up as a family, and Jay nodded again in agreement and started telling me to listen to my mom and forget about it because they already did, and I swear I wanted to knock him out so bad. I told them to get out of my room or I'd go back to my grandparents' house, and this time I wouldn't return, and my mom now started crying and said I was going too far, but they left. My dad stayed and I told him that I wanted to go back to my grandparents' house and stay there until I finished school since I'm a senior, but my dad refused and said he didn't want us to be separated again and that he'll find a solution for it. I've been wondering what I should do. Jay is still here and he had been knocking on my door, which was locked, after dinner and telling me to take his gift, which by the way is a figurine of an anime character called Gojo from an anime called Jujutsu Kaisen, the one we both liked, and he said that it costed more than $300 and since he spent all that money I should take it. My dad told me not to take it, but I wasn't planning on doing it either. My dad has also told him to stop trying to talk to me and to stop coming in my space because he's making me uncomfortable, but it made both my sister and dad to argue. My sister said it's not necessary to stop Jay from coming close to me because Jay has zero interest in children like me and dropped her nice act after that. You guys told me to tell my dad to ban him from coming to our house and he did, but my mom and sister were against it and my parents even argued over it, but it doesn't really surprise me that Jay is still around even right now as I am making this post. I think he might believe that what he did wasn't wrong if my sister didn't believe me. Plus B said she'd move out if Jay was banned from coming to our house, and my mom cried about it and begged her not to while arguing more with my dad, and so that's not happening soon, unfortunately. I don't want to be alone with him to record our conversation because I don't know what he can do to me when we are alone, so I'm sorry but I won't do that. So far when he's talking to me, it's mostly him talking about his gift and how he really wants me to take it, and I don't feel comfortable taking anything from him. My sister also can't force me to take it because it was expensive, but I don't care. Also during dinner my sister said that she was uncomfortable now that I'm around and was saying that I ruined the peaceful atmosphere that was there in the house before I came back. She even said that because of me making accusations towards Jay, I ruined the happiness our family had and also almost ruined her relationship. My dad yelled at her to stop saying stuff like that to me, and my sister yelled that only my mom loved her and that my dad and I were nothing to her, blah blah blah. Honestly, I don't know what her problem is. But I feel like it's kind of my fault that everything happened. There's been a lot of arguments between my family members and it's making me feel bad. Maybe I shouldn't have told my sister about Jay's confession. But I really did it with no bad intentions and because I didn't want to hurt my sister, but she didn't even believe me and neither did my mom. She said she believes my side of the story but then goes ahead and still sides with my sister. That's mostly why I don't want to talk to her. It's honestly upsetting and I really want to leave again. My fiancé is threatening to end the wedding if I don't let her parents move in with us. After my grandfather's death 6 months ago, I inherited 90% of his wealth with a no-contest will, granting me not only enough money to never work again, but also a massive estate he claimed was his hunting cabin. It's big enough to fit my fiancé, my parents, and her parents comfortably. However, I said I didn't want them moving in with us, and now it's turned into a total blowout. To those who will ask, no, common law doesn't apply to us, and after a heated debate she agreed to sign a prenup if I agreed to buy her a niece ring, and a vacation once a year. She clearly isn't with me for the money. Obviously, this comes off as a rich people problem, but up until 5 months ago I was still living in a one-bedroom apartment working at a rather large supermarket retail store making $12 an hour, and going to be paying off college debt until I was in my 60s. My fiancée is still working her nursing job, and we've been fully living together for 4 years. Some background into our relationship: we met 6 years ago. There were literally zero issues with us dating. When it came to some sort of conflict we sat down, explained both of our sides like adults, and generally fixed the problem. We've rarely gotten into arguments, and have the same end goals in life: children, grow old together, die, be buried next to each other, and have fun whenever we can. I've always had an incredibly distant relationship with her parents. When she introduced me to them, they both stated they didn't like me to my face and thought I wasn't good enough. Her father even said, "Not in my lifetime." When I asked for his permission to marry his daughter, which I stated the only reason I was doing it was for an olive branch. My parents on the other hand love my fiancée. They scooped her up like she was one of us from the start. Has never said anything bad about her in public, nor have they in private. She, at least, in my parents' eyes, is the metaphorical second coming of Christ. During my grandfather's decline in health, I was the first one there. He just got old, and with being old comes complications. I stopped working my higher paying job to work retail to have more time to take care of him, because his other children were busy. This was a very stressful time in our relationship. I had just recently left my job, was not around often, and I myself was super stressed. Recently, I began the slow move of everything over there. While we still have to live in our apartment until the lease agreement is up, there's nothing against the rules of me moving stuff. I brought it up to my girlfriend how taking care of my grandfather has really made me realize how important my family is, and that I wanted to know if it was okay for my parents to move into the new house with us. My dad could retire, and my mom can spend the rest of her life relaxing, not stressing over bills and debt. Because I can pay that off over time. I'm not insane enough to pay it all in one go. She expressed how that was an amazing idea, and how she'd like her parents to move in as well. I laughed at the idea, and asked her if she was serious, and why would I want to live in a house with people I don't like, nor want to interact with. She explained that this could be a good chance at us healing old wounds and making amends. I explained that not only do I not want to heal old wounds, if it was up to me, they wouldn't be coming to the wedding. Obviously this was the wrong thing to say, and now she's giving the ultimatum of let them move in, or the wedding is off. While I can understand her side, I seriously do not want to interact with them in any capacity. They've tried numerous times to get her back with exes, lie about me, even spread a rumor about me being unfaithful, until I pulled up real evidence of me being nowhere near where they said I was thanks to Google location. My fiancé knows all of this, and still wants to try and rebuild a relationship with them. This past week, I've been avoiding her with excuses and white lies. I've been meeting with accountants, lawyers, wedding venue people, and jewelers. I've also been spending all-nighters at my grandfather's grave drinking with him, and not getting back home until 4 a.m. To me, it feels like my grandfather is still the only person I can vent my deepest secrets, and frustrations to. I've postponed the wedding. While some of you may refer to it as calling her bluff, I call it waiting and seeing. As of right now, we're really talking about how compatible we truly are, going over our goals in life again, and talking in depth about the relationship we want with our in-laws if we got married. Apparently a lot had changed since the last time we talked about it. She genuinely thought moving her parents in would make my relationship with them better over time. I've expressed that as a result of all they've said/done to me, any positive relationship or communication with them will only be done out of necessity. For example, if she was pregnant, in the hospital, or any life-altering complication or celebration. She did not take this well, but that was expected, but it's important I tell my truth. She believes I'll come around, and try to build a relationship with her parents, but as of right now I can't see myself doing it. My parents won't be moving in, as I haven't even asked them yet. I know some of you were confused/assumed it was already happening. It was not. I asked if it was okay if they could. Not telling her it was happening. Some of you suggested that maybe moving them in as newlyweds was weird, and suggested building them a small house on property. I didn't think about that, and will talk to my accountant/parents about it whenever that conversation needs to be talked about. Nice idea, Reddit strangers. What have I been doing? A lot of meetings about my future, finances, and setting up trusts/wills. I'll be re-enrolling into school to take classes on business, finances, accounting, and economics as my accountant suggested I do. We're still working on a budget, but as of right now my next steps are furthering my education to manage my newfound wealth and opportunity in a healthy way as to not blow it. As of right now, to be honest, I'm emotionally drained. I think the weight of my grandfather's death is finally hitting me despite it being months later, and the only thing that kept me going was the idea of the wedding day. With that being postponed, I can really only focus on myself, my values, and my emotions. Staying up all night and drinking at a gravesite isn't healthy, and I've not only promised myself to cut back on the booze, but also not stay up drinking. I've been thinking about maybe getting into some sort of therapy or grief counseling, but I'd need to make sure that is in the budget with my accountant, as that's a long-term thing. Maybe they know someone. I know a lot say to drop the relationship, but I think after 6 years it's worth giving it a try to save it. Making a choice like that without trying to fix the problem seems silly, but I did expect a lot of those answers to come through. It's just how Reddit is. Just know that, I know my worth, I know my values, and I'm not backing down. Maybe we won't work things out, and the relationship will just end. Maybe things will work out, and we can continue. At least for now. 48 hours later, it's too soon to tell. As for the prenup, We haven't signed anything yet. A lot of you are really harping on the niece ring, and fancy vacations once a year thing. While the vacations compromise is indeed concerning, the ring issue is something we've been having conflict on for a while. My personal opinion before/now is that rings are overpriced, silly, and serve no significant purpose in a relationship. She says that they're an important symbol of love/commitment. The compromise to the prenup in regards to the ring was, I actually buy her a better ring than I already had. Which sounds super predatory in those words, but it makes sense in my mind. She doesn't want a Titanic heart of the ocean style jewelry piece, just something a bit more noticeable. I probably should have elaborated on that in my original post, but hey, we all make mistakes. Which to some sounds like gold digger mentality, but I know the price range of ring she wants and it's about the same range my dad spent on my mom's ring. It's something you'd see on a middle-class woman's finger, nothing huge, nothing small, just enough I guess. I still think they're just silly circles of metal and compressed dirt. There's not much to say. We sat down, talked for a while. I explained my side of things, she explained hers. She was upset I was postponing the wedding, but once she realized I wasn't going to fold, she agreed under the notion that it was best for our relationship to work on this before marriage. Right now, I'm taking a step back from her to clear the air, and give us time to formulate what we want on our own. I've driven the 2 hours to the cabin. Thankfully the internet people hooked that up yesterday. I've talked to my parents, not about them like moving in, but about the situation as a whole. Leaving out, I went to the internet before I went to them. While my dad can't just abandon his job, he sends his love and support. My mom is currently making the 18-hour drive, so I wouldn't be alone by myself. I've gotten attempted phone calls from the in-laws within the last 24 hours, but I've watched them ring and went back to doing my everyday tasks like lawn work, meal prep, reading, binge watching Netflix. It's strange, but right now I feel happier alone right now than I do with fiancé. Maybe it's some sign that it's not meant to be, or that I've finally been able to relax for the first time in years and have found comfort in solitude. Maybe I'm happy my mom is going to cook me my favorite dinner as a child. To cheer me up. I think as of right now though, I have a lot of work to do, not only emotionally but also literally. I'm thinking about doing some telework just to still have a mainstream of income part-time, as I'll probably get bored of being jobless in about a week. I need some hobbies. Your parents disrespected me? I'm leaving. So, I am 26 female, black, and my boyfriend 32 male, white, have been dating for about 5 months now, and he is honestly the best thing that ever happened to me. He is the first guy who's ever made me consider marriage and starting a family. I did love him. Now to the story. Last weekend was his mom's 60th birthday and my boyfriend was going to go to the birthday party. He thought it would be a nice occasion for him to introduce me to his family, so he asked me to join him. We let his family know that he was bringing me and they were okay with it. His parents' place is 3 hours away from the city we live in, so we decided that we were going to spend the night. So, we arrived at his parents' place and his mom, dad, brother and sister were there. They hugged me while greeting me and I honestly thought they were genuinely happy to meet me. It didn't feel like anything was off. They all seemed like nice people. So we spent the evening talking, and there was a lot of laughter and everything was going great. At around 8 p.m., my boyfriend and his brother leave for the airport to pick up a relative of theirs who was flying in for the party. So, I'm left at the house with his mom, dad and sister. I didn't feel unsafe or anything. They had been nice to me the whole time. I had left my phone charging in the room we were going to sleep in, so I excused myself to go check if I had any important messages or calls. There weren't any, so it didn't take long. I start heading back to the living room, and as I'm walking back, I hear them talking. Then his mom asks, "So, what do you think about her?" I immediately knew they were talking about me, and I honestly wanted to know what my potential in-laws thought about me, so I stopped and listened. His dad says, "She's nice." His sister agrees with him and adds, "She's pretty too." Then his mom says something that immediately made me sick to my stomach. She says, "Yeah, if only she wasn't a Fu King N-word." And they all agreed with her. My heart dropped. I tiptoed back to the room and I sat there so confused. I was shaking so much I didn't know what to do. I wanted to call my boyfriend, but I had a weird feeling, so I didn't. I felt so alone and unsafe. I felt like I couldn't trust anyone around me, not even my boyfriend. I live in Canada and people here are not as open with their racism as in other places. Which in my opinion, is much more scary. Now at that moment, the only people I could think of asking for help were my sisters. One of my sisters lives in the US and the other one is in Canada but in a different province. They both live far away, so there is nothing they could have done to help me at that moment, but I felt like they are the only people I could trust. We have a WhatsApp group chat, so I sent them a message telling them what happened. I have lived in Canada for a couple of years, but it's not easy to make trustworthy friends here. Canada is a lonely place. I have met a lot of people, but I don't feel like any of them are my friends. If you are an immigrant in Canada, you probably understand what I mean. Anyway, back to the story. So my sisters were like, "You need to find a way to get out of there immediately." They tell me to make up an excuse saying I had an emergency and needed to leave. I stayed in the room for some time scared to death. It took everything in me not to start crying. After I had collected my thoughts and calmed down, I did what my sisters told me to do. I hadn't unpacked my bag yet, and luckily, we brought my car cause it's fuel efficient compared to my boyfriend's. I took my bag and car keys and passed the living room in a rush, saying something came up and I had to leave. I didn't give them a chance to ask any questions. I just got in my car and drove away. It was getting late and I wasn't in the right state of mind to drive back home. I just wanted to get as far away as possible before stopping at a hotel for the night. My boyfriend had called me a couple of times. I called him back, but I couldn't bring myself to tell him what had happened, so I gave him the same excuse I gave his parents. He asked if he should come home as well and I told him it wasn't necessary. I went home the next day and my boyfriend showed up at my apartment a few hours later. I looked at him and it felt like all the love I had for him had just disappeared. Though I acted like everything was fine, I wondered if he was racist too. He had been so great during our whole relationship. I never once felt like he had any racist thoughts or feelings. But I can't help but think about how his family made me believe they were nice people, and I keep wondering if he's also just pretending to like me. We don't live together, but my lease is ending in July. He owns his place, so I was supposed to move in with him after my lease ended, but I have managed to get out of moving in with him. I don't feel like I love him anymore. It's been 3 days now since we got back from his parents' place and I want to end things with him without it causing any trouble, but I'm glad I thought to run away. So this happened a while back. I was probably around 10 to 11 years old, meaning my brother, Alex, was around 8 to 9 years old. We were walking home from the bus, which takes about 7 minutes to do, when I noticed something was off. I didn't see anything at first, but I just knew that something was wrong. So my brother and I start walking home. As the only two who got off at our stop were him and I, this blue and silver beat-up truck drives past us, and I think nothing of it. It never slowed down or stopped. It just kept going. Alex and I were holding hands, as my grandmother always told me to do with him, as he's my baby brother and I want nothing to happen to him. Nothing happens at first, but then the same truck drives around again, driving our way this time. There was a cul-de-sac at the end of our road. It was driving slower this time and went up the road and turned, out of sight. Now Alex and I were nearing the three-way intersection that connected the cul-de-sac road to the other side road. Right off the main road the man just drove down. I happened to look down the street and see the truck driving, real slow, down the street towards us again. I knew we had to run. I knew there was no other option. I knew that if we didn't, my brother and I would not be safe. I don't know how I knew, but I did. As soon as we passed a house that blocked us from view, I turned to Alex and spoke to him exactly 4 words. No questions, just run, and we did. In our driveway, which is about 100 feet long by the way, there is a row of bushes and pine trees that divide our home from the next door neighbor. I dragged him in there and told him to be quiet and I'd explain later. I watched as the same truck drove down and around the cul-de-sac again before coming to a stop right in front of our house. I had to hold my brother's mouth shut because he was crying and I was scared that whoever was following us would hear him and hurt us. I was more worried for him than for myself at this point. I was in fight or flight mode. I was the big sister. I had to protect him. I looked at him and said that the truck was following us, and I told him to not be scared. I said I wouldn't let anyone hurt him, and it seemed to calm him down a little. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, the door to the truck opened and out came a man. He was tall, skinny and messy. Short hair covered by a torn baseball cap. Ripped jean shorts and a puke green tank top. He entered our yard and looked around a bit. Alex and I were still in the bushes and I was trying to find a way to get to our house safely without getting this dude's attention. The guy left after what felt like forever and entered his car. He started it and drove away slowly. I waited a few minutes to make sure he was gone before turning to my brother and saying, "We need to run. When I count to 3. We are going to run behind the house to the back door. Okay?" He agreed and we waited a few more seconds before I started counting. I still didn't have a good feeling about this, but I knew we had to move. I started counting. As soon as I hit 3, we booked it across our driveway and into our front yard to go around the house. As soon as we left our spot I heard it. The sound of accelerating. He saw us. He was waiting for us to leave. He chased us up our driveway, as we ran around the side. I grabbed Alex's hand and practically dragged him around the house and made him run ahead to the garage door to see if it was locked while I searched for my house key. About 20 feet from me, the garage door was open. I swear to God I saw this man round the opposite corner of the house that we did as I entered the house. We entered and I slammed it shut, locking it and deadbolting it. I didn't stop running until I opened the house door and ran downstairs with Alex, screaming our safe word. My grandmother made a safe word for us that was a normal everyday word that we could use if we were in danger. Just had to scream it. Basically it woke my aunt who worked the night shift and was sleeping. We told her everything and she stayed up with us until my grandmother got home. We called the police and that was my first ever interaction with an officer. The man was never caught. To this day I don't know what he wanted, but I'm sure it wasn't good. I'm just glad my grandma drilled stranger danger into my head. I don't know where my brother or I would be right now, if she hadn't. So, to the messy man in the blue and silver truck. Let's not meet again. I dropped my friends for spilling my husband's biggest secret. I told him this on the 4th of July. After the fireworks mostly ended and we were heading back, I asked him in the car, wouldn't it have been weird if we met each other before the first time we actually met? But we just didn't think of each other as significant at the time? He smiled and turned to me saying, "PFFT, that's impossible. There's no universe where we would have met and I would not think of you as significant." That statement struck me in the heart, because I knew I would soon prove that sentence very wrong, but I continued on with my plan anyway. What if I told you we have met each other before? Before that time I was introduced as E's little brother's friend? He looked at me like I was crazy, so that's when I pulled over on the side of the road and pulled out my phone to show him the post I put up here before, that explained everything. He took about 8 minutes to read the whole thing, and when he finished he put the phone down and stared straight ahead, almost like he was dumbfounded, scared, and confused all at the same time. I started throwing out every excuse and apology I could muster at the moment for about 15 minutes straight when he decided to tell me to stop, and I did. Then he just sat there and sobbed uncontrollably for about 10 minutes before he finally asked me how much of our relationship, and how much of my identity, was fabricated according to his liking. I told him the honest truth, none of my personality or identity was fabricated for him, except for the fact of how we met. The only thing I ever changed about myself to make him like me more was lying about liking Chinese food. I hate Chinese food. But other than that, everything else was real. Although my friendship with his younger brother was built upon ill intentions, my friendship between his brother and I are now one of the most genuine friendships I have now. He just cried and told me that he does not want to divorce at all, but he does want us to have some time apart so that he could absorb the truth that I gave him. He also said that he expects me to tell his brother and mom this Friday because they deserve to know the truth just as much as he did. I told him okay, and we drove the rest of the ride home in silence. When we got home, he hugged me and cried for about 5 minutes before he got out the car, packed his stuff, and said that he will be staying at a nearby hotel for now. He said that he knows that he still loves me, but does not yet know how to react to the fact that the beginning of our relationship was very, very orchestrated. To sum it all up, I guess telling him was a success? I honestly don't know. He sent me a good night and I love you text last night while he was at the hotel, so I guess he's as much mad as he may be betrayed? Update 2. Woke up this morning to find out that hubby not only lied about going to a hotel to stay at, but also lied about not wanting a divorce, through a text message. He went to his family's home, not a Foofking hotel. Told them the entire story himself, probably exaggerated it too to make me seem crazy. His whole family wants nothing to do with me too, claims I'm psycho. He said that he lied about going to a hotel, because he knew if he told the truth I would try to stop him? Honestly, I feel so betrayed. I tried to be a good wife by showing him the true me, and this is what he does? I did all this work just for it to end up like this? Honestly, I kind of deserve it. I didn't even tell him in the first place because I felt bad. I told him because I had a suspicion that he was catching on to the fact that I knew him for 2.5 years before he knew me, largely because I found out he was keeping my old phone in his work desk. My old phone that has screenshots of a lot of his old Instagram posts, plans in my notes app about him, etc. So I guess he never truly loved me if he can't even get past an honest confession like this one. I might update this in a few years when I find a new husband. Lol. He cost me my wife, so I ruined his lover over and over again. Either 10, 20, or 30 years ago, I married my high school sweetheart, Betty. I had just graduated high school, and she was staying in high school, pregnant with our first child Frankie at age 18 to 19. Throughout her pregnancy and our dating I was informed of Betty's condition of epilepsy. She had infrequent seizures, and I have seen her have a grand mal seizure twice before the incident, once while eating, and once on a family hike. The light flickering through the trees triggered it, we think. So later down the road we have our second child, living on our own in a trailer park in Bloxnard. My wife has always been a little bit punk, dyeing her hair many times over and over, and now having to shave her head as a result of her extremely damaged hair. She dyed what was left of her hair pink. She was a belly dancer, had a style of her own, and really had a don't F with me vibe she gave off to anybody but me and our 2 boys, Frankie and Sam. These aren't just nostalgic details, they are important to the slowly increasing plot. That being said, one afternoon while Betty is getting ready to drop the boys off at Grandma's to hit the mall, she had another seizure, a bad one. It's hard to be too descriptive without choking up right now, but she knew it was coming the second before. She hits the ground, I do my part to put her on her side and sweep the mouth. I know this is frowned upon now for some reason, but it's what her parents trained me to do. I call an ambulance, telling them help, my wife is having a grand mal seizure, a bad one. Whilst trying to instruct my frightened 3-year-old to go to mommy's bedroom, Sammy was hardcore napping at 11 months, literally inches away. The ambulance shows up and takes her. I stay back because Grandma isn't there yet for the kids. I called to make sure she'd be there soon, otherwise I'd have to drag the kids with me to the local hospital. Grandma gets there and I drive to the hospital as fast as possible. I get there pretty quick and talk to the doctor within a few minutes. The ER physician, we'll call Dr. Thoreau, steeped in irony, whose mercy I was at, told me that we're going to put her under to do a CAT scan / MRI / something having nothing to do with her epilepsy. In my naivete, not understanding that I can tell him what I want him to do, I just said okay. I did tell him, however, that she had a seizure, has had seizures in the past, etc. He didn't believe that the seizure was epileptic in nature. He asked me about substances she's taken, drinks, etc. I told him no, she doesn't do that, but she did have a drink a couple of nights ago. He was super convinced, based on her appearance I presume, that this was substances, and that she just needed to get it out of her system. Toxicology comes back. No substances in system. Dr. Thoreau says this doesn't test for all substances out there. Wow, doc. So she's put under now, kept in that state, in the meanwhile no EEG machine, which measures brainwaves, to determine that, yeah, she's having a seizure. SS, give her some phenobarb or whatever. I didn't know the importance of all this at the time, so we're just waiting for this test and that test and for her to come out of the under-ness or whatever. This takes a day and a half. They finally allow / acquire an EEG machine, with an EEG tech, and come to find out I was right, that all along, she was having seizures. The entire time. Now she is brain dead. Now I'm signing DNRs and hospice and neurologists are asking me about Buddhism and if I've tried it. Nice try. So she died days later. Then something called 9/11 happened, which not only was 5 days after what would have been my wife's 23rd birthday, but exactly my 25th. Let's just say it was a rough year. My father-in-law tries to go to one of those law tigers with the case, but they say it needs to come from the husband. At first I don't want to go through this process, despite knowing that. This mofo's arrogance caused my wife's demise. I eventually lawyer up, get referred to a great attorney on contingency, and begin the lawsuit process. Revenge is starting, EEG techs, hospitals, various entities involved in Betty's care, all separately settled out of court for unspecified amounts, well specified to me obviously. This is just the beginning of the revenge. Of all the entities that bowed out of the fight and handed over a check, this arrogant doc wasn't having it. He wanted a trial. He really wanted me to have to relive the pain I'd been going through the past couple years just protect his/her name. We take it to court. Revenge by jury. 7-2 in favor of the plaintiff. Dr. Thoreau fell below the standard of care. Judgment for $10 million. Goodbye money. Civil suit done. Enter fallout in the medical community. Ultimate revenge is that the doctor had his license suspended for a time, and didn't practice medicine for a long time. Then he tried his/her hand at different types of professions. Unemployable in the medical field. To this day. Dude's broker than I ever was. I raised the rent of a mother with 6 kids because they asked me to be more professional. I am a small-time landlord, with just 4 tenants. Earlier this year, I had 2 sisters that didn't respond to my request to add the gal's husband to the lease, though he was living with them. Not a big deal. But did I mention the pit bull they also brought home, without permission? I do allow pets, and had previously approved their other dog. I asked nicely in person and by email in the months leading up to the malicious compliance. They also did not respond when I asked if they were happy there, and wanted to renew their lease for the following year. I asked again. Then I emailed them notice that I would start showing the unit 2 days later. I try to be a nice landlord. I do. They had a newborn, as well, so I scheduled all of the showings within a 2-hour window on the same night so I could be in their space as little as possible. Also, because they had not responded, and it was now serious crunch time for getting another tenant and my spouse worked all the following 2 weeks during evening showing hours, I had the delightful inconvenience of bringing my 2- and 6-year-old children with me to the showings. Because I'm not a corporation, I'm a small-time family landlord with kids. Try to imagine how difficult it is to conduct business meetings with 2 kids, right? Then imagine staggering showings every 15 minutes, with prospective tenants who are also bringing their own kids. Just to further clutter your imagination, this is an 800 square foot 2-bedroom apartment with a cozy entryway. So I arrive with my 2 kids, to find that my tenants are still at home, along with the husband, the newborn and the other sister's boyfriend. So that's 7 people in a small kitchen already. Then the first prospective tenants start arriving. Husbands, wives, with kids, and some showing up early so there's 2 sets of them. That's 14 people in a small kitchen. And I'm a mom. I have magical powers. So I'm holding my toddler, my daughter is safely under the dining table coloring, and I'm chatting with the prospective tenants and directing traffic while my actual tenants prepare to depart. If you didn't know this already, it's common practice in the US to leave the premises during real estate or apartment showings. This was their first apartment, so I actually emailed them ahead of time to let them know what is generally expected at showings, for example a relatively tidy apartment, and that they can leave, for their own convenience. They do eventually leave, after the boyfriend tells a prospective tenant that he, in fact, also lives there. And I carry on with an exhausting scheduling of showings. And have my new tenants all picked out and lease signed by the next day. Awesome, right? The next night, I get a voicemail from the husband, who is not my tenant. I saved it, and just listened to it again, because it still gives me that same delightful shiver of malicious compliance. In his voicemail, he told me how awful it was that my children touched his infant's things. They didn't, because I keep my kids entertained with magical mommy toys, but prospective tenants also brought children, and how they had to sterilize everything to keep their infant from being sick, and how inconvenient it was to have showings with only 2 days notice, and how very unprofessional I was to bring my children, and asked if I could just be more professional in the future. You can hear it, can't you? The deep shiver of malicious compliance vibrating through my offended being. The next morning, I started issuing professional lease violation notices. 1 for the extra residents of the unit, hubby and boyfriend. 1 for the extra dog. And a few additional ones for building concerns I noted during the showings. They ignored the violation notice, which I sent by certified mail and, thoughtfully, also by email. I decided to be even more professional 30 days later, and issue a 5-day notice to vacate. And I called their mom, who is their emergency contact, as an eviction notice is an emergency. Did I mention that their lease was due to end just a few weeks later? But it would be unprofessional of me to let these violations slide until then. 3 days later, they'd magically sent me all the information I'd requested, removed the other dog, licensed the first dog, gotten the required pet insurance. They moved out on their lease termination date. And skipped out on their last electric bill, and left the unit in damaged condition. Despite my professional security deposit disposition statement and request for payment, they ignored those notices, until I stated I would proceed to small claims court by X date for the total due beyond their security deposit. On said date, they replied stating they didn't think it was fair that they should have to cover damages to the unit, or pay any more money toward their utility bill. Yep. 2 months later, there we were in the lobby of the courthouse, sitting across from each other on uncomfortable waiting room benches. They're laughing among themselves about how they're going to get their full security deposit back. And I'm quietly reviewing my presentation notes to the judge and my sizable stack of evidence, photographs, videos. This was my first time in court, but I wasn't laughing. I was preparing. 1 hour later, we're back in the lobby and their mom is trying to write me a check for the full amount of the judgment. She doesn't have a pen. Her kids don't have a pen. I, however, have a pen. I cheerfully offer my pen. She writes the check and hands it to me, and... Wait. I hold out my hand again. Got my pen back too. I escaped modern slavery but risked it all to go back home. It started when a man came knocking at my mother's door. He told her parents that he'll put her to work all for a small price. Without my grandmother getting a say, my grandfather sold her. My mother was no longer a burden and was enslaved at a young age to provide for her family. She was sold for a couple dollars, trafficked, and has been a slave all her life. I was born into her world, and it was only until years later that I was saved from hell. My job was to work on Lake Ulta, the largest man-made lake, scuba diving every day in the dirtiest of waters, working on ships, and serving under an overseer. Whenever I failed at any of these tasks, I was beaten and denied food. I watched my mother receive senseless beatings after slaving away every single day, working for scraps. I slept every night paralyzed in fear without shelter. I laid on dry grass, paranoid, wondering if I was going to be eaten by the lurking wild animals. Watching the punishments and sacrifices my mother made pushed me to keep working hard because it meant we were providing. What I didn't know at the time was that I had been conditioned to think that the child labor I did was normal, necessary even, and the cruel treatments I got was all there was to life. It was only until I saw other kids much younger than I being treated terribly that I learned there was no escape from this life. There were senseless beatings, many of my friends were malnourished, and worst of all, many of them never got to grow old with me. I watched them pass over with my very own eyes. As I watched the other kids around me draw their last breaths, I constantly wondered when it would be my turn. How many more beatings would I have to take? Every day was a constant battle of trying not to sink and drown in muddy water. When I was 10 years old, the entire course of my life changed. My mother, in search for a better future for her and I, gave me away. I was taken in by the Rescue Foundation Many Hopes. I was taken to their recovery center, and for the first time in my entire life I was given food, water, and adequate sleep, without having to worry if it'd be taken away from me. I had clothes to put on my back, and I couldn't understand the generosity of the people doing this for me. I never asked for anything, and they continuously kept providing me with everything I'd ever need to actually live. They took me back to my actual hometown, and I was finally allowed to live with my grandmother. I was granted the opportunity to a completely free education paid by Many Hopes. I was happy to learn, but I had so much catching up to do. I didn't even know how to hold a pencil. I was a slave for all my life, and this was my first time learning anything that wasn't ships. I regularly thought about the other kids at the lake and how many of them wouldn't have a home to go to even if freed. I thought about other people like my mother, who lost their childhood and worked all their life. Many Hopes granted me a way out, but my only job now was to work harder than everyone else in my class. I needed to do it for my mother, who slaved her life away, helping me get set up, and for my grandmother, who took me in. All of my continuous hard work paid off, and I was awarded the highest honors of admission to university, all semesters and supplies paid for by Many Hopes. It didn't mean my struggle stopped there. Working in school through all the traumas Lake Ulta gave me was one of the biggest challenges I faced. I had many sleepless nights, and this affected me in school at times. Physically I was free, but my mind wanted to take me back to the lake. I tried to forget everything about the endless murky lake, all the kids that were beaten and starved. But I had to keep moving forward. I had to break the cycle in Ghana of desperation, and show that no human has a price. After graduating from university with a business degree, I was granted an incredible job working for marketing campaigns. I flew on private planes for companies like Shell Oil and Tiffany's. I did everything everyone around me thought I would never do. I worked from literal rags to riches. However, there was a gap inside me that I still couldn't fill. Though I achieved freedom, the fact is there are still kids hauling ships, moving nets, being beaten every breathing moment. I couldn't leisurely work at my job knowing I still have brothers and sisters left behind that needed a chance to be saved. I made the bold decision to quit my career and went back to Ghana and worked at the Many Hopes and Challenging Heights Rescue Center, the same exact one that saved me. When I returned to my home village of Winneba, I was greeted by the children, hugged, and paraded by all of them. I knew I had the knowledge and expertise to show the kids in Ghana that they too can be like me. Right now I'm running investigations to locate kids that are trafficked, finding out where their home is, and freeing them out of slavery. The trauma, scars, mental illnesses, and stolen childhoods is almost unbearable to witness. I don't wish it upon anyone. Our Many Hopes facility receives donations till this day, and every cent goes a long way to ending modern slavery. It's remarkable to think there are good people in the world that care about our cause and care about saving these kids. It's so easy to live in comfort and turn a blind eye to the rest of the world, like I almost did while I was in school. But I've seen change being made from those that pay attention. I myself am a prime example of the change made by people who care. People with expired NDAs, what's the information you can now tell us? I had an NDA at the daycare I worked at. When I started, I worked with this crazy woman, let's call her Brenda, in the infant room. Now, Brenda was probably in her 60s but dressed like a 20-year-old in the 80s. I remember a spirit day we did that she showed up in a snakeskin miniskirt and knee-high Converse stilettos. Brenda was terrible with children, forcing them to eat by shoving spoons of hot porridge in their mouths and holding their head. She would barely burp the kids, force me to change all of the kids, and never did any activities with them, even though that was the selling point of this daycare. I was left to do all the paperwork and enrichment. She also discussed being hurt in various ways with bottles in the parking lot by her boyfriend who she stalked. I went to management more than once to voice my concern about her. She was a danger to kids. They told me, and so quote, be mean to her until she leaves. You know the boss won't fire her. Apparently, the daycare manager would get a good bonus if she didn't have to fire anyone, so she refused to do it. All the staff were underpaid, overworked, and the staff higher up were really good friends with the parents of some of the most annoying kids in the daycare. You couldn't do anything with those kids, their parents let them run the daycare and wondered why no one could get anything done. I had one of the kids say something incredibly rude and yell at me and her mom. Then the assistant manager came in and blamed me for the actions of the kid, and apologized to her mom and assured her I will do better in teaching her kid. Excuse me? We were always told when parents were touring so we could put our best face on. When you tour a daycare, you are not seeing what the daycare is like. Teachers in other rooms were regularly yelling at kids, pulling arms, putting kids in timeouts, and not letting them eat with everyone if they acted up. Which is all incredibly not okay. If you tried to do everything the right way, it would take longer and you would get in trouble for not staying on schedule. I was invited to a pure romance party within my first week working there during class time. There was a designated crying and screaming room. One of the parents pulled their kid out of the daycare and left a well-earned 1-star review on Google, and the boss required every parent that worked at the daycare to leave a review. Even relatives who never set foot in the building were putting in reviews loaded with BS. So the grandmother of the kid wrote a review pointing that out as well. 2 1-star reviews don't stack up against 10 5-star reviews on Google, so no one really knows how bad it is.